Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
We're going to talk to an author now. Ed Polley, thank you very much for being here with us.
Hi, Anita. It's great to be back.
Yeah, and you've heard him before. He wrote this great book called Ragwood, Raggwood, Ragwood. And, of course, he's a work in progress. He's working on other kinds of books, and he's such a charming young man, and it's been such a privilege to have you in my lair, as they say.
Well, the pleasure is mine, I promise. Oh, and I am still 24, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Still 24.
Okay, sorry, you can be 24.
September, baby.
Isn't it interesting? It's early in the morning here, and we have a gorgeous sunrise coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, I was so glad that he was coming in this morning, because young people are the ones who hopefully will really respond to Tomorrowland, which I told him I just saw, at the IMAX, and it's pretty exciting. And I know you've heard about it, and I know you're going to see it.
Yeah, well, as I told you before we went on the air, I love Brad Bird. I think Brad Bird's great. Anyone listening who hasn't seen either The Iron Giant or The Incredibles, you got to see them. They're great movies.
I haven't, so I'm going to do it. The Iron Giant and The Incredibles.
The Iron Giant was Brad Bird's first movie. That's when he left The Simpsons to make his first film. And it's a great movie. It's exactly how it sounds. It's set in the 40s and or in the early 50s in kind of a 50s sci-fi style way, middle America. And it's about a giant robot who crash lands on Earth and a little boy who finds him. And the robot's head is dented. He doesn't remember why he was here, but he spends time with the boy. And then when he remembers he was designed to pretty much enslave the human race by the Martians, the boy tells him, you have a choice. And he chooses to save people instead of kill them. It's a beautiful movie. I can't stress that enough, much I love that movie.
I think you're going to be my movie go-to. You'll tell me what I should be seeing. I love that. But, Edward. I should really call you Edward. You want me to call you Ed?
No, call me Ed.
It's okay.
On the books, it's Edward William Polley, just because it sounds more writery.
Yeah, right.
When I was younger, teachers always said it sounded regal. I met someone who heard my name, and she asked, are you a writer? Yes, I am.
So I want to just talk about when someone says, are you a writer? When you get up in the morning, do you start writing right away? Tell me what a writer who's really a writer like you does.
Well, I don't know. I never really considered myself like a writer. I write, so I guess I am, but it's never like I feel more like a model maker when I make the books. But to answer your question, no, I don't write first thing in the morning. I try to read a little bit in the morning because that's the best time to read. And when you do something like this, something creative such as writing or making films or painting pictures, you got to keep inspired by it. You got to keep loving it. In other words, you have to keep discovering books that you love, movies that you love. Otherwise, it starts to get a little hard. I haven't been reading as much lately because my reading time's been more for writing. But I will be honest, sometimes it gets a little hard. And so you got to keep being in love with it. But yeah, every day after I read, I'm writing. Every day. When you're working on something, you got to write just to make progress.
But also because it's your passion. This isn't casual for you.
Yeah, I do love it. And I realize that I'm good at it, but it takes a lot of work. So if you don't do it every day, you're just not going to make progress.
Well, we featured Ragwood as a publisher's choice a few issues ago, and I really found, you call it a novella only because it's small. It's not a big short. But it was a very, very interesting idea to have a monk as your focus, as your character. Have you ever met a monk?
No, not really.
In your mind you have.
Yeah, it's monk in like a metaphorical sense, I suppose you could say. And I got to tell you, I love the review you did. I love how you didn't give anything away because the story does make a couple genre twists as it goes along. But this time, if you want to get into it and talk all about it,
I'd like to do that.
Feel free. Ask me.
Yeah. No. I want to know about, how did you know it was ready? Because I see all your books. I'm sitting here. He's in the middle of writing another book, and he has these notebooks, 3, and they're quite beautiful, and he handwrites everything. So, like an artist, how do you know when the painting is done?
That's a good question. I suppose I come to the end, and then the writing part is kind of the quickest part. The first draft usually comes out pretty quick, and then it's a matter of cleaning up the writing just to make the moments work better and everything like that. But I know I'm done because I make a lot of corrections. When I go back and change my corrections back to what they originally were, that's how I know it's getting worse instead of better. And that's how I know I'm done.
That's good. That's like I've seen people who are artists, and finally someone says to them, "Look, leave it alone already.
Yeah,
you've done everything you can do." They start adding more color, like you said, and they take other color away. And I think I asked you this before. The name Ragwood, very unusual name. Do you ever name a dog that?
No. It was a word I made up, and not anymore. It used to be my password to all of my, email and all the accounts. It isn't anymore. I'll say
so
again.
don't listen to anybody.
Because it was a word no one would ever guess, because it was a made-up word.
Yeah.
But it was a title to a story I did a long time ago that I just rehashed for this. Because in the story, it does serve a purpose. There is a place called the Ragwood.
Yes.
For those listening.
Yes, and the interest. And I love when you first start. You see, that's what catches you. Where this woman is pregnant.
Yeah.
And yet she needs someone to help her.
Yeah. Introductions are very important. Introductions of characters are very important. And I suppose I'll start at the beginning. In literature and books, the most important lines are the very first line and the very last line. So the first line of the book, there's a first page just kind of to throw the reader in. But the first real page of the book, it starts, "The rosary beads had once been coarse, but now were smooth between his fingertips as he prayed." So we're introduced to the character through that. And right away, we know he's he's consciously chosen to be this way. And it's taken him a long time to be this way. So we know exactly who he is right at the beginning. He's nothing special. He's just a guy who's worked his whole life to be the way that he is. In the last line of the book, the same thing. It says he's pretty much just a man. Is an echo of the beginning. So its bookends meaning the same thing, ending and beginning in the same place.
I did not know that. That's very interesting.
Again, these things are subliminal. Yeah, the reader doesn't have to pick them up, but they do. There's a purpose between every single line of the book. It's there. And the girl, as you said, she's pregnant. She's going through, again, metaphorically, you don't have to read into this, but in the story, she's going through a spiritual rebirth. And it's literalized through being pregnant.
Yes, but the characters that the monk sees along his travels, how do you invent those?
They just come. I never know. When I start writing a book, or when I started writing this book, all I had was the character in the first two scenes, and then once I wrote those two scenes, where does he go now? So he just starts going, and I don't do outlines. I'm very much against them. I could never do them as a kid, and now as a writer, they really just hold you back. For those listening, if you don't know what an outline is, usually a writer writes a couple pages saying exactly how the story's going to go. Pages 20 through 30, they have banter, so we see that they're in love. Pages 40 through 50, they get in a fight, and so on and so forth. And it just limits you so much. The way I do is when I'm going through, I'm feeling it out. I said, it's getting slow here. A character should come in. Who is he? I don't know, but maybe he'll be great. And then I figure him out as they're going on. And that's how characters come in, and then they start to serve a purpose as they go along.
Ed, that's why I like you so much. I do the same thing. When I sit down to write something, I don't even know where I'm going. I just decide to write, and it just does flow. And then, of course, you have to go back and correct. But my husband, on the other hand, when he writes, he's an outliner. And he does the same thing, and then it keeps him going. But so it's the way your mind goes. I think you live your life that way too. My husband is highly organized, and I'm not. I'm like, I'm just going out there, and it's not that we don't know what we're doing. We just do it differently.
Yeah. The best way I can think of to equate it to something is the difference between tourism and traveling. When you travel, you have a basic idea. I'm going to go here, but you don't have reservations. You just see what happens, and bad things happen, good things happen, but it's always, involving. Tourism, it's from 10 o'clock to 5 o'clock, we'll be here. From this time to this time, we'll be there. And you get to see places, but you don't necessarily get the feel for them always when you do that. So I'm more of a traveler than a tourist, as I say.
I agree with you totally. So I want everyone, when you're listening to this, Ragwood is something, it's Raggwood, and Edward William Polley, Polley. It's worth picking this book up. It moves very quickly. You'll be able to get right through it. But when you get finished, it is captivating. It's like, I think it's the kind of book you want to read again, you see, because you miss things. It goes so fast.
Yeah, it is designed to be that way. There's many, many layers to it that you don't have to get right away, but if you repeat and repeat and repeat, you'll continue to get things from it. As many times as you read it, there's more and more and more.
And we, of course, have a lot of listeners who are, I would say, desirous of being an author. And even though books don't sell, people generally, one in millions, really make a lot of money as an author, it's something inside people that they have to do. They have to do, and I always say, before that's out, nothing existed. Now you've done something, and it exists.
Yeah.
It exists, and it's kind of, a lot of people have thoughts, but the thoughts are to them. But when you write, it's out there in the energy of the world for zillions of years and people. I mean, you can't take it away.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's it almost feels like having a kid because you work with it, and then once it's off, it's its own thing, and it's a little out of your control. And as you're writing it, it becomes its own thing. That's whatever's inside you is going to come out onto the page, as you said, thoughts and all that.
Yeah, no, it is, and it's wonderful to have had someone of your age know that this is what you want to do. And I think once before I believe I asked you, how did you know you wanted to be a writer? You said you did this when you were very young. You started in school. People recognized that you had a lot of ability.
Well, people recognize there's something just weird about me, I should say. I took drama class, I took an art class, and I took a creative writing class. And my drama teacher said, you're going to be an actor. And my art teacher said, you're going to be an artist. And my writing teacher said, you're going to be a writer. Even though I failed in the creative writing class, I got a D or something. But I didn't start necessarily writing or really reading until I was a late teen. And that's when things just started coming up in me. And I spent my years after that just, contemplating things and getting into things. And then stories just started coming. As you said, how do you know when you want to write a book? It's just you get an idea for something, either a moment or an emotion or a character, and you want it to exist. You just want it to be there. That's what happened with my next book.
How many pages do you think your next book? Now, this was only, if I recall, like about 100 and very few. It wasn't a big book.
Usually a novel is about 40,000 words. They judge it by words. Ragwood is about 20. That's why it's a novella. It's short. My next book is easily 4, maybe 5 times longer. It's a full-length novel, and it functions differently. Ragwood was meant to be very fast, very quick. You read the whole thing sitting in one sitting, almost like a film. It takes you as long to read this book as it would be to watch a movie, pretty much. The next one...
Do you have a name for the next one?
Oh, yeah, it's called Nikolai.
Nikolai.
Yeah.
Nichholai?
No, I spelled it differently.
How?
Nickoli.
Okay, Nikolai, sure. It sounds Russian, but go ahead.
Yeah, it is.
Is he a foreigner?
Well, he's a mystery in the book.
Mystery.
We don't really follow him in the book, so it starts to become a question: why is the book called Nikolai? But as we go along, you start to hear about him. And then he starts to, become more present in the book, I should say, until you realize who he is and where he's been this whole time. But the next one, it's different. Ragwood is kind of an adventure thing. It's very straightforward. It's very linear. You follow it all the way through. The next one, it's more of a suspense book and a little bit of a mystery because it builds. And you should have a feeling that something's going on. And then once it happens, everything changes and it goes nuts. The best movie I think to ever do this is probably Alien. If you remember the first half of the movie, nothing happens. you're just sitting with the characters and atmosphere is building. But then when the alien pops out of the guy's chest, you're completely thrown, and then everything changes. And now you have an emotional attachment to the characters.
That's good.
And Nikolai, in a way, follows that. But it's what I call it is a modern Gothic romance.
Okay, gotta write that down.
And it's not a piece of pastiche or a throwback to a genre. It's set in modern times, and it's a very modern book. But it follows all kind of the textures of a Gothic romance, which is a genre I love very much.
Well, let me ask you a question. So, on our radio show right now, is this the first time that you've said your name of your new book, Nikolai?
I think it is. I think it
Isn't
might
this
be.
exciting?
Yeah.
So this is an important show.
Yeah, it should be wrapped up in the next month or two. It should be completely done, and then I'll start shopping it around to publishers and agents and stuff like that.
And do you see Nikolai in your mind's eye? You see him? It's
Yeah.
a him, I have to assume.
I have a notebook I keep with me that I write down ideas, I write down lines, I do little drawings of characters. And the first thing I thought of the book was pretty much what he looked like. So I did a drawing, and I tell you exactly how he looks.
Well, you have to, because
Yeah.
I want to see him in your writing.
Yeah.
I want to know what he looks like. And
The important people, I do that.
Character development is so critical, isn't it?
It's not always important what a character looks like, but sometimes it's very important. And sometimes you just care more. In Nikolai, there's a character, she's my favorite character in the book, and maybe my favorite character I've ever written. There's something just about her
Do I have her name?
that I love very much. Her name is Mileva.
How do you spell that?
Mileva.
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 Oh.
She's named after the gypsy woman in The Wolfman.
Oh.
It's just a name I've always just loved. But when her time comes, it was actually kind of difficult to find a very fluid, very quick way to get all the details of how she looks, because the imagination works very fast. And I'm usually more about the big statement of either a room or a person. What's the big statement of how they look or how it feels or something like that. With her, I had a lot of trouble getting all the details really quick in a fluid way so you can see her the way I want you to. Not that it's necessarily important, but just I love her so much. I want you to see her exactly how she is.
Do you have a lady friend or a man, somebody who she looks like?
No.
Is this just a
No,
a total?
it's
Would you
peculiar.
like to find someone just like her?
I would.
I knew you would. I was gonna say.
Characters, when you start to write
Oh my
characters,
gosh.
they become their own persons, and sometimes they act in a way that you don't understand at first. It's a very odd thing to say. They become real people.
Sure.
But this one more than any. I don't know why. I feel like either I met her or she exists somewhere in the world. She's somewhere. I don't know. But just I love her so much, and she's such an odd character. And I place her in the second half of the book towards, if you separate into thirds, she's in the third, just to bring more energy into it. And she kind of has a starring role. As Orson Welles said, a starring role is someone you hear about for the first half, and then you see him, like in The Third Man. You're always hearing about Orson Welles, but you don't see him. And then when you see him, it's like, oh, it's Orson Welles.
Is she a heroine?
She is in a lot of ways. She's the strongest person in the book. And she's counter to, I suppose you could say, the antagonist or the villain of the piece. She's the counter to him. And tonally, she's kind of peculiar. She wouldn't fit in the first half. In the first half of the book, it's very real. And as I said, towards the middle, something odd happens that throws you. And then by the time we get to her, you completely believe that she's a real person. She can exist, although you wouldn't at the beginning.
It's amazing that you can make this happen. I am so impressed with you. I told you when I first met you, I said, I am so thrilled that I had the opportunity to meet you and to be able to review your book. I want to go off to something else because
Please.
It's rare that I get a chance to ask someone of your age and the genre of zombies.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand zombies. Why do people... What is the fascination about zombies?
Well, I've never done a zombie thing, although I did have wants to do a zombie movie once. I got ideas to make a big statement about how we live in the world and everything, but I never did it. Zombies are great. They're a very malleable creature. They can mean all kinds of different things. They, for example, in Dawn of the Dead, which is one of the most famous zombie movies by George Romero, the second in his trilogy, or I guess there's been more now, there's been 4 or 5, but or the original trilogy, is about consumerism. We have a few living people who hide up in a shopping mall, and there's zombies all just coming to it for no reason. There's no people in there to eat. They're all just coming here, and someone asks, why are they here? And another character says, this is what they remember. It's familiar to them. They're just walking around the mall, lumbering around, as you see some people do. And in the third one, Day of the Dead, zombies almost become a representation of the world and how we deal with it. There's a few people in a bunker. There's a scientist. There's the military. And then there's just a few people who are trying to survive, like a pilot and so on. And both the scientists and the military have their own ways of dealing with it. The scientist is pretty much destroying or torturing the zombies, not caring if we survive or not, just because he wants to understand them. Then you have the military who just wants to blow everything up, even though they know that isn't going to work. We have to find a new solution to the problem, and the two conflict and no solution is found. But again, they can mean different things in different movies. You can always change what they mean. Often they mean the masses. And in, I think, The Walking Dead, a show which I've never seen, but we see how people are when the veneer of society is stripped away. What are people really? And often they're animals or they're survivors, or they can have a great amount of humanity where they're willing to either sacrifice themselves or do incredible feats to help people. So the zombie genre is great, and often it can just also just be fun. It can just be outlandish. There's one I love called Return of the Night of the Living Dead, and it's not a sequel to Night of the Living Dead. It's a separate thing by Dan O'Bannon, who wrote Alien. He wrote and directed this, and it's a comedy in a lot of ways, and it's serious in a lot of ways, and it deals with cliches. There's a lot of cliches in it that never actually happen in zombie movies. You never see a zombie walking down the street kind of saying, brains. But in this movie, you do, and there's a reason why. It's like the endorphins in the brain. It's ridiculous, but it's a lot of fun. That movie's crazy, and it's funny, and that one's just fun to watch.
Thank you. I have never asked anybody about zombies, but I did have a friend who decided she was going to, I guess it was a movie. She did a movie, and it was on zombies, and I thought, what the heck is she doing? And I never asked her, but because I didn't want to embarrass her or me. Yeah. But thank you. I will watch something like that because I'm always open for it. But having you on the show, of course, when you're here, I am so excited to talk with you because you are so well read and so articulate, and I know there's going to be great things from you. I mean, your first book was Ragwood, and I was privileged to be able to review that, and I just know that you really will do well, and I wish you so much luck with your next book. Of course, Nikolai.
Yep.
Right? That's
the title.
That's the title, Nikolai, and Malova. I'll be happy to see who she's going to be. Blonde, black hair. Do we know what kind of color hair she has?
Well, she's Croatian, so she isn't black.
Okay. I don't mean black. I mean hair.
Black hair.
So she has black hair, probably.
No, she has brown hair.
Brown hair. Oh, my. Well, this is going to be very exciting to your life. You have 75 years at least, probably
and I've
more.
Got a lot more books on the table. I already know the next 3 or 4 that I'm going to do.
Fantastic. We have to find you a really good publisher. We have to find you someone who sees your abilities and who wants to go with you. That's what the next thing is.
Now that I have more material, I'm starting to look for the right person.
Right. Well, I guess we've run out of time, but I want everyone to be able to get this book. You can go to Ragwood. You can go to Amazon.com, and I'm sure you can buy the Ragwood there. That's Raggwood. Look up Edward William Polley, Polley.
Mm-hmm.
And I really thank you. He came all the way in from Stewart to be here this early, and now we've lost the sunrise has already passed. Thank you. This has really been very joyful for, I'm sure, our listeners.
It was a blast for me.